Hello, welcome to closing night of the JCC of Metro Detroit's 2021 Lenore Marwell Detroit Jewish Film Festival. I'm Eric Lundberg, chair of the festival. Welcome. On behalf of the staff of the JCC and our amazing committee, we know it's been an interesting and trying year. We thank everyone for their ongoing support and participation. We are broadcasting live. It's Sunday evening, May 23rd, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this amazing closing night event. As a reminder, this event will remain available right here on YouTube. Even after we're done, you can watch it another time, or you can tell friends who couldn't make it tonight to watch it tomorrow or in the future. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the reminder bell. That way you'll never miss out on all of our exciting events. The Detroit Jewish Film Festival celebrates the art of Jewish filmmaking by presenting films, encouraging discussion about Jewish stories, and creating shared experiences with filmmakers and audiences around the world. Our festival this year ends tonight at 11:59 p.m., so there still is time to watch another movie. Go to our website at culturalarts.jcc.org/filmfest for more information about all of the films, or if you want to watch another one tonight. If you are with us live, you may ask questions and offer comments in the YouTube comment section below, or by texting the number in the corner of your screen. Our speakers tonight will take as many questions as possible, but please be patient as each question cannot be addressed right away. Tonight we're learning about and honoring the legacy of director Joan Micklin Silver, who passed away at the end of last year. To lead us through her life and work, we have with us two award-winning actors, each of whom was in one of Ms. Silver's most well-known films. From Hester Street, Carol Kane, and from Crossing Delancey, Amy Irving. Moderating the discussion will be Ken Bowser, documentary filmmaker and former friend of Ms. Silver. Carol Kane is known for her work on stage, television, and film. For Hester Street, she was nominated for the Best Actress Oscar at the Academy Awards and has won 2 Emmy Awards for her portrayal of Simca in Taxi. She also earned an Emmy nomination for her work on Chicago Hope. She was also a series regular on the award-winning Netflix film Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt as Lillian, where her character dated Peter Reigart, who was in Crossing Delancey opposite Amy Irving, and now stars opposite Al Pacino in Amazon's Hunters. Amy Irving is also known for her work on stage, television and film. She has her accolades include an Obie Award, 2 Golden Globe Award nominations, 1 for Crossing Delancey, and an Academy Award nomination. She made her film debut in the horror film Carrie, and is also well known for her role in Yentl with Barbra Streisand. Beyond her well-known and well-loved roles on stage and screen, she has done significant voice work for animation and audio plays. Ken Bowser is an award-winning filmmaker specializing in documentaries about American culture. He wrote and produced the Emmy-nominated John Ford, John Wayne, the Filmmaker and the Legend, for PBS's American Masters program. It was an official selection at the 2006 Cannes Film Festival. He has also produced and directed the Emmy Award-winning documentaries Preston Sturgis, The Rise and Fall of an American Dreamer, and Frank Capra's American Dream, along with extensive production and direction work for ABC News. Please welcome Ken Bowser, Amy Irving, and Carol Kane.
Hi.
Hi. How are you all this evening?
We're great. How are you, honey?
I'm good. Eric didn't mention.
How are you, honey?
I can call him honey because I'm married to him. This is total nepotism.
Well,
I'm
one
here.
thing Eric didn't mention about the two of you is what lovely human beings you are.
What human beings?
Lovely human beings.
Oh yes, we
You are human beings, but you're also lovely.
We are.
Thank you.
We love each other too.
We love each other. That's why we're lucky.
There you go. So we're here celebrating Joan Micklin Silver, and just briefly about her, she was born in the Midwest in Nebraska, and in going back through her career, it was kind of fascinating. By the time she got to Hester Street, which is her first feature, she kind of done a lot of work in show business. She dealt with Otto Preminger and been fired off writing Such Good Friends. She wrote a film for Mark Robson, another kind of tyrant and giant figure of studio Hollywood. And that film she did get her credit on, and as a writer in the story credit. And she directed an enormous amount. And just before Hester Street, she did a film called The Immigrant Experience, which wasn't totally about the Jewish experience, also the Polish and Eastern European people coming to America, which was a combination of documentary and recreations using actors to tell the story. And that all of that brought her to Hester Street, which, by the way, no one was interested in putting up the money for. No studio would touch it. We can't make a film about, it's such a niche audience. Nobody's going to care. And so she got turned down by everybody. And finally, her husband said, you know what, I'll help raise the money for the film, and did. And the film just quickly was made in '75, and it cost about $350,000, or roughly 10 times less than Amy's film, which was also for a studio film, a very low budget film. But and it was shot in 34 days. And Carol, how did you come to that project?
Oh, I came by it honestly, Jan. I auditioned for it, and I auditioned for it a bunch of times. But interestingly enough, my father designed a wing of a temple that Ray Silver's father was the rabbi of in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, where I was born. My parents were born, and also, they knew Joan, but none of that worked in my favor, or maybe it didn't work against me.
You did get the role, Carol.
I did get the role, but Amy,
yes,
I really had to audition a lot. And finally, my final audition, I had to work with a fantastic actor from the Yiddish theater who taught me my lines in Yiddish. Which I didn't speak, but I learned them phonetically. And so my final audition was actually speaking in Yiddish, and I did get the role, that's true. So maybe something worked out there. And I got to make the big $400 a week.
$400, wow.
I don't cover dog food.
But boy, I was so lucky, as you both and all know, to get to play that beautiful, beautiful role in that complex and extraordinary story from a bento brief. And the thing about Joan, being a feminist, the original story in the Jewish Daily Forward was the story of Jake, the husband. He was the focus of the story. And when Joan wrote the script, she refocused the story to be the story of Gettle, the wife.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting when I was watching an interview with Peter Riegert, and somebody asked him what it was it different working with a female director or a male director? What's the difference? And he says, well, they're just individuals, but he felt like if a man had directed Crossing Delancey, that it would have been from his character's point of view, Sam. But because it was Joan, we got to be the gals at the center of each of the stories.
Although I have to say, in rewatching the movie, which I told Amy and Ken, I've seen it many times and I'm transfixed by it every time. I do feel that in some way it's in every way, it's kind of a very fair point of view, because I feel that Sam's character is portrayed as exceedingly wise, and that Amy, that your character, she
had a journey.
What's that?
She had a journey that she needed to learn from him.
Yeah, and he kept tossing it out to her like a frisbee, and then at some point she caught it. So in a way, I feel it was not feminist, or I think it was very fair and humane, humanitarian.
I think he also bases everything in a realistic situations, like the Sam character. He's a pickle man, but he's never apologetic about it. He's not one of these guys who says, well, I got this. This was handed down from my father, so that's why I'm doing this. He's very proud to be a pickle man. And she created a character that wasn't like an obvious. None of what she does is obvious,
No, nothing stereotypical, really.
It's and not cliched either, because normally you'd think, oh well, here's the girl who wants to be with the sophisticated literary world and would never have anything to do with a working man. But this was a working man who was very comfortable in his own skin and very, very happy to be who he was.
Yeah, and very honest, therefore ultimately more attractive than the Lothario artiste, who was basically a shyster.
No kidding.
Let me interrupt you, as long as we're going to go to Crossing for a minute.
Ken, you mean that?
That's Carol Kravitz is saying so many nice things.
Now, Amy's film was in '88. Was made in
It's not
'88.
Amy's film, it's Joan's film.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Joan Micklin Silver film. Indeed. It was made in '88 and cost about $4 million, which sounds like a lot, but for a studio film was actually a very tiny budget. And how did you get the job, Amy?
Well, Joan said that she had been looking for her Izzy for quite a while and was having a hard time. And then one day she went to the movies on the Upper West Side, and she saw me with my kid, or not even my kid, with my girlfriends. I was with my girlfriends. I had no makeup on, and I was scarfing down popcorn. She just always likes to use that expression, scarfing down popcorn, which I kind of wish she would stop saying because it made me sound like such a pig. But she just saw me, yeah, there you go. She just saw me being like this normal gal hanging with her girlfriends, and she went, "Oh my God, that's my Izzy." But she didn't approach me at the time. And then when she wanted to offer it to me, I happened to be doing time in Spain, in Jerez, Spain, as a location wife. My husband at the time, Steven Spielberg, was directing Empire of the Sun, and I was there with our 1-year-old son, or 2-year-old, I don't know, what, year and a half, whatever.
I like the expression "doing time."
Yes, I was never a good location wife. Anyway, so she knew I was in Jerez, Spain, and she flew there with the script in hand. And my mom, Priscilla Pointer, happened to be there with her husband, Bob Simons. And we all hung out together in Spain and had the greatest time. And she asked me to do the film. And I read it while I was there with her and God, it was such a good script. And I just said yes on the spot. And then Stephen loved the script as well. And he and I never worked with him, and I like to keep my career separate from him all the time because I just wanted to do something on my own. But he just said, I have to send this to Steve Ross at Warner Brothers. He's going to love this script. And so he did, and Warner Brothers picked it up.
And let me add quickly that everybody had also turned that script down.
And too Jewish.
And probably Warner Brothers had turned it down until Steve Ross read it, and then, it got turned around. So
Steve Ross was definitely our champion at that point. Yeah.
Now, you'd made a number of films at that point, Amy, and Carol, you'd only made 2. And were they both in Canada? Was Last Detail in Canada too? Did they shoot that up there? Do you remember?
Well, what when you say both, what are you saying?
I'm thinking
The White Wedding.
White Wedding and then The Last Detail. Those are
The first movie I made was Carnal Knowledge. So that was
before?
I was 17 years old, I think, or 16 years old. And by the time I made Wedding in White, I was 19. And Last Detail was, I think, after that.
Yeah.
So 3, and but actually, Carnal Knowledge, oddly enough, it was we shot in Vancouver. It wasn't Canadian, but yeah. So
So all 3 of those were in Canada.
Yeah, although, like I say, Carnal Knowledge.
That was in Vancouver.
Detail were not Canadian. They just happened to be shooting in
Because it was cheaper.
We were watching Hester Street the other night to remind us, because we hadn't seen it. Neither of us had seen it since it first came out, and it is such a perfectly beautiful gem of a film. And the fact that it's Joan's first film was just amazing. That she had such a and you are luminous. I mean, you're just so wonderful.
Well, as are you, Amy.
We're talking about Hester Street now.
So let's talk about Joan. Let's start with Carol.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second.
Please.
You may.
Something really important I want to say about Hester Street is that when I first read the script, I felt as though I was watching the movie. It was so exquisitely written and in such detail, so aesthetically complicated and vivid that I thought, I'm watching this movie. And I think I have to say that whether I gotten the movie or not, I still would have stuck to that. I watched the movie when I read the script.
It was, by the way, written by Yeckel was the name of the novel. And where did I dropped my notes on his name. I apologize for that. I'll get it back in my head in a minute. But she adapted it from a novel. And as you said, Carol, it was basically the man's view.
Male character's point of view.
So tell me about Joan Micklin Silver. Tell me about that human being. Who was that? What was your impression of her?
Are you asking me or Amy?
Either.
I've got to say that Joan, maybe because I met her with my mom, she was so, I felt a certain maternal thing from her, but also she was awkward socially. She just never was, she wasn't like a warm and fuzzy gal who just gave and gave and gave, but she was so smart and she casts so well that she was able to kind of put us in this situation and just let us go. But she also always made you feel part of it. She would never be like the auteur and over here and you're all just doing what you're supposed to do. She wanted to be a collaborative experience. Now, Susan Sandler wrote the screenplay directly from her play, and we were never improvising. It was always exactly what Susan wrote, which is I love working that way because I hate improvising myself. But I mean, if it's written so well, you don't want to deviate, because we're not. As an actor, I'm not smarter than the writer. The writer knows what to do. And Joan cast the most amazing people around you. Granted, shooting in New York, you have the pick of a lot of incredible actors. But
I thought, Amy, I thought the same thing when I watched Crossing Delancey again. And I saw that every single, even tiny, like 3-line part was cast with the best actors.
I mean, you see, like David Hyde Pierce was my assistant in the books, and then his career blows up. I mean, you see the people there who all went on to have nice careers or worked all the time because
she had well, I guess it sounds I don't mean for this to reflect on us, but she had kind of impeccable taste.
She did. She did. I mean, beyond us. I mean,
beyond us. Every part.
There was a moment in when we were getting ready to work, and there's a scene in Crossing Delancey where at the bookstore we would bring writers in to do readings, and we had scored Isaac Bashevis Singer to be a reader at one of the scenes, and we were very excited about this. At the last minute, he bowed out, and we were already getting ready to shoot the scene. So I said to Joan, I said, well, I have a friend named Rosemary Harris, who's one of the great English actresses of the world. And we're really close friends. And I think she would really be wonderful. You make her a poet or something, and she could step in. And Joan said, great, call her. Well, there was no email in those days. So it was like, I couldn't even send her the script in time for when we needed her to shoot, and she was living in North Carolina. So I called her and I said, can you trust me on this? I have a really nice role for you.
Gorgeous in that movie.
Come and stay with me in my apartment. And we lived together while she did that, and she just, sir, darling, and she just came, and she was delicious.
Gorgeous.
But
so Carol, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
Carol, what was your experience when you first met her and then on the film?
Well, I just, as I say, I auditioned a bunch, so I was perhaps a little more intimidated, but also I was very young, so I had a lot of chutzpah in those days, as we do in Rio.
We still do.
And I felt that I had to fight for Gittel, even though Joan wrote Gittel. And I think she always respected that. And she was so smart. She was always mysterious to me because she did not have the demeanor of a sort of a wild and crazy artistic type. She was more like a very conservative.
She's buttoned up.
Yeah, buttoned up. Is that what you said, Ames?
Yeah, she was
buttoned up. And Ray, her husband, was a businessman in prefab housing, and together.
Prefab housing? That's what he was, a businessman?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they were an incredible dynamic duo. And I remember one of the among the stupid things that I thought I knew better than was that when the movie had been made and we couldn't get a distributor because who would want to distribute a little $375,000 movie about Russian Orthodox Jewish people at the turn of the century in black and white and in Yiddish partly. And so Ray decided that he would distribute it. And I went nuts. I thought, that is insane. He can't possibly distribute it. And I tried to talk him out of it. Ray, meanwhile, was quietly consulting with John Cassavetes and who advised him as to how to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, he did the most brilliant, genius job of distribution on this movie. But I thought I knew better. And I would just have to say that in the case of Ray and Joan, I never knew better. They always knew better. But the thing is, they were mavericks. They were conservative, button-down people who were mavericks.
They were mavericks, yeah.
They just went ahead and did it the way they instinctively and studiously, because like I said, Ray studied with John. They did it instinctively and studiously the way they thought was best. They didn't, they just didn't pay any attention to the fact that they hadn't done it before. How's that?
There you go. I watched an interview, Carol, with you and Mrs. Silver, and she was talking about the day the film opened in New York, and the expectations were, to say the least, limited. Certainly by the people in the know, the distributors who understood how the business.
Pouring rain, right?
And it was pouring rain, and she had decided, no one's going to come out. I can't stand this. I'm not going to go. And I guess her husband or one of the young men who worked with Cassavetes was there and said, no, you have to come down. I think it was East 72nd Street Theater. I'm not sure. But no, you have to come down here. Come down here. And so she went, and there was a line around the block the day it opened, people with their umbrellas. And
oh, no. Now, why is that? I still don't know to this day.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that begs the question of why is it that almost a half a century later and 2/3 of 30 years later, we're still talking. A little backstory. My father was an Irish cop and a tough guy, to say the least. And when Amy and I first started going out, he thought, and he met her and he liked her, and he said, was she in that movie Crossing Delancey? And I said, yeah. He said, oh, I love that movie.
Who
Now, this is an old, hardened Irish cop, who just, he fell in love with it. He loved that movie. And that's another story. But so why is it that all this time later, there was a lot of wonderful films made in 1975, a lot of wonderful films made in 88, and yet this film, every time it's screened in New York or the outer part of New York or in California, it's filled up with people. How come both these films are resonating so strongly all this time later?
Because they're so personal, they're so specific.
They're so specific, but they're also about, people used to ask me, aren't you, when I was promoting the film in 88, they were like, aren't you worried that this is like, because it's a Jewish story that, everyone's going to think, it's only, I said, it deals with a single woman in New York. Doesn't matter whether she's Jewish or not. It was a romance. It was a romantic comedy, and it was Jewish, but it was something that we all feel. It had nothing to do necessarily. There are aspects of both our films that are very Jewish and deal with the Jewish culture, but
they're very specific and very universal. Someone has asked me in the comment section here, or maybe it's actually Eric, the head of the festival. Had you read the story, the novella, Carol, before you auditioned for the part?
I read a lot. I read a lot of the Jewish Daily Forward. I think I read the story. I read so much. I researched so much because it's such rich material to research.
No, but before you even were auditioning, had you ever heard of that book, that novella?
No, not before. Not before.
My daughter asked me if Gittel was Izzy's great-great-grandmother, what would she think of Izzy and the life she's leading? because they're two opposite ends of that story. One is a woman who's totally immersed in the Jewish culture and the Orthodox Jewish culture, I should add, and is not trying to escape it, but is trying to find ultimately finds herself and her own strength.
What do you think, Amy? What do you think?
I'm sorry?
I wonder what Amy thinks.
Well, wait, let me finish the thought, which is, and the other end of the story is a woman who is pretty much completely disconnected and not interested in that culture to some degree. There are really two ends of that story from a woman's point of view. So I'm curious.
You know what the answer to that is, Ken? We met 2 days ago. The three of us had a little conversation on the phone just to kind of catch up and kind of see where we were going with this. And both of you were kind of reacted to Izzy's character and her married lover, because when Izzy when her married lover comes by and says his wife is out of town, can I spend the night? And Izzy says, okay. Both of you were kind of like, wait a minute, no, that you weren't having an affair with him. No, I mean that was like almost too modern for either of you to deal with.
No, I saw it.
Yes, but only the third time you saw. I mean, when you first saw it,
That's right.
But I think that was because you were gittled. I mean, that's insight into my great grandmother looking at it. You just said okay. I mean, hey, and I could feel the judgment of Izzy. And the fact that stepping into the modern world was a stretch, but Izzy was a modern girl. I mean, she was a modern girl and was
I think from Gittle's point of view, I think she would have been torn about how tradition was so explicitly important in Gittle's life, but on the other hand, there would have maybe been an admiration for the freedom that Izzy felt. I think there would have been a very complex reaction.
Also like Ken and I both and you have different reactions to the get. Did we both got that you wanted the get in Hester Street, that you wanted the divorce, and that you had the strength, and you didn't. But it's like, as we said, looking at art, everyone kind of takes away from it, from their own experience, what they got from that. And we both got that you were finding your own strength and getting out.
I think that I did find my own strength out of absolute necessity and out of necessity to protect my son.
Say that last again.
And out of necessity to protect my son.
Your son.
But I don't think that it was like, oh, thank God I got my divorce. I in a million centuries, Gittle, could never have anticipated that I would have a divorce from my husband. I can't imagine the shame of it, and yet I had to receive it. I had to receive it with dignity, largely because I had to protect my son.
And I think I asked you on the phone the other day when I watched the scene of of his friend David Silver. Was David Silver related to Joan? Yeah, I don't think so. I think that was his first part, and he wound up being in 1,000 television shows.
Who was David Silver?
He played not the lawyer, the guy who comes to you with the offer
To negotiate.
The negotiate. He has a name, and I'm sorry, I don't know what that's called.
Oh.
But he offers, when I watched it, and he offers you $100 and then $200, and you keep just not saying anything, and it's a question of, are you just trying to inflict the most amount of,
No.
what was your thought? What do you think it was?
No.
You just want it to happen.
Well, I mean, from my point of view and how it was for me doing that scene, I had no thought about negotiating. I was just so profoundly shocked that a stranger would come into my home and offer me money to obliterate the life of my family. That was my point of view.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea what was intended in the script or anything like that, but that was my point of view.
And I can't.
My shock was so profound. I feel that my shock was so profound that I literally could not speak. But that, I don't know what was intended.
Well, what's interesting is, in researching Hester Street, Joan had Elia Kazan and an old friend of mine, Ralph Rosenblum, who cut all of Woody Allen's early films.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know Ralph Rosenblum. Anyways, he had them. They came in and looked at the film and gave her a lot of suggestions about how to order it. And imagine having Elia Kazan.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so when that scene happens, there's a sense in the film of your victory. So even though your intention may have just been shock and that
right,
I can't believe my marriage, the way it's your triumph because he winds up.
I think that is a very simplistic take on it.
Well, the last scene, when your ex-husband is going down the street with his new wife, well, I guess still a girlfriend, he says, so we'll open this store, right? And she says, no, I don't have any money. I gave all the money away. And he goes, what do you mean? And she says, oh, we can't take the train.
Life took us for all we were words or whatever.
Yeah. So it's the way it's arranged, that's how it comes out as a victory.
Oh, that's really interesting. But I'd like to say one other thing about what you just said, Ken, because I some years ago, maybe, I don't know, 7 years ago, made another low budget movie that I thought had enormous potential and a beautiful script. And there were several artists in my life who offered to look at the movie and offer notes, etc., just to see it. And that offer was refused, for whatever reason. And I just like to say that I did not know about, Kazan, etc. But I just have to say, again, that's hats off to Ray and Joan that they were humble enough to know what they didn't know and to ask for help, which is not always easy, especially when you want to make your mark. My mark.
Yeah. Well, and Kazan certainly knew about the immigrant experience. He would make his own film about that. I'm sorry?
I said he would be a good person to go to.
So when you were making this Hester Street, did you know that you were making a film that cost nothing?
Yeah.
Was it difficult?
I mean, I wasn't getting.
I know they were paying you nothing, but.
No, but I knew that there wasn't anything.
Because you can't see it on the screen.
No, you can't see it at all. They were so creative and innovative, and the classic story is the one that Joan likes to tell about the horse says on Hester Street with the scenes of the, peddlers and going down the street and seeing the outdoor scenes, which look almost identical to the Godfather scenes of the peddlers and all that money. And the classic story is that they had one horse, they could afford one horse, and they literally painted the horse 3 different colors. So that it looked like they had horses coming and going. That's true.
Horse of another guy. And Amy, when you were making Crossing Delancey, which again for a studio film, that was a very small budget. Did you feel it? I mean, was there pressure?
I didn't feel any pressure. I felt Joan was so sure-handed at every moment. She had no doubt about what she was doing. We had a lovely producer, Michael Nozick, I don't know. I don't know about you, Carol, but I've butted heads with quite a few producers when they aren't necessarily in the flow of what the director and the actor are doing. Michael was not one of those. He was just so supportive and wonderful. There was just a really nice feel on the whole thing. I don't remember. Granted, we didn't have big dressing rooms, but we had a dressing room. Everything was fine. Everything was really. I was so happy to be working in New York City. It's just there's such a cool thing about walking down the Upper West Side streets or going to Gray's Papaya and doing a scene at Gray's Papaya on 72nd Street. It just felt like, that was home, and it just felt good to be there. Never felt the oh, there's time or whatever. I think we just all, we had very little rehearsal. I think there was a table read, whatever, but I think everybody was just kind of ready and knew what they were doing and got out there and did it.
What I love so much in your movie, Amy, is Sylvia Miles.
She's crazy gal.
Oh my God, she's so great.
Watch her eat.
That's the thing. The character eating with such passion and zest and gust. I don't think I've ever seen anyone eat on screen like that, except for what is that English film, Tom Conti or something. But the way she eats that's it. That's a character and a story unto
It's a
itself.
good thing it was not a big budget film, because she would have had to have done that 20 times. Luckily, she only had to do that a few times. They don't do a lot of takes because that was a lot of food.
Oh, what a choice. What a choice it is. It's so vivid. The appetite for life of that character displayed in the appetite for food. It was just so great.
And Amy, where did they find your grandmother?
Rachel Bozic, she was a big star of the Yiddish theater. She was from Poland, and she'd gone to Argentina, and while she was in Argentina, Hitler had come in, and actually one of her sons was killed there, but she and her husband, who was also a comedian, the two of them came to New York, and they were like the 2 stars of the Yiddish theater. She'd never acted in English before, and
Really?
This was her first film. And she did not want to, she was not happy about doing it, and we convinced her to come in and meet. And when she walked in for the audition, the 2 of us we pretty much fell in love with each other.
I was going to ask you, what was your relationship like? Because it seemed so intimate when you.
It was so intimate. She was so nervous. She was so scared, and it was my job to take care of her. And I'm someone who has terrible stage fright. So for me to have to take care of her took me out of my own fear.
You were lucky, yeah.
Yeah, it was a really great thing. And she was.
One thing I noticed, Amy, this last time too, is I noticed how her hand shook.
Yeah, she's a shaker.
Great things, and I did later. I wondered if that was something medical, or if it was just because she was nervous, or.
I think both. I think she was nervous, and I think she used it too. I mean, I think it was just part of
It
the
was
character.
lovely, and then I noticed that she had a tremendous amount of work to do physically. She was always bringing things to the table and bringing things away from the table, and that she was always carrying something, and yet her hands were always shaking. So
But she was not a fragile person in any way, shape, or form. She was a really tough broad, and even though this was a new world, whatever, she just found her element, and she reveled in it. She loved it.
yeah, that's so great.
She loved being with her. So
How did she and Sylvia get along?
I think they got along fine. I don't remember any problems with them. I mean,
But
think
you're such different creatures, as you said.
yeah.
Different worlds, yeah.
I think she was a little kind of shocked by her, a little bit kind of, and then she enjoyed her. You know, Rachel is a comedian, so she appreciated someone who knew how to play comedy.
Yeah.
You know, let me just say something about Joan Micklin Silver again. She was, Amy, even though in subsequent years you worked with a number of women directors, at that time there weren't very many. Ida Lupino, there were some earlier ones, Dorothy Arzner, but in that period of the 60s and into the 70s, there were very, very few women directors, certainly directing features. She not only changed the landscape for that, and it just occurred to me with both films, first of all, it became obvious with Hester Street that essentially a man who knew nothing about distribution could figure out how this thing worked and launch this tiny little film into an enormous success that shocked everybody, certainly everybody in the business. And I think what just occurred to me, Amy, is your film in '88, the studios, your film was financially successful. It was certainly critically very successful in terms of how much money it made versus its cost. It wasn't as successful as Hester Street. But I think the studios at that point realized, oh, wait a minute, we could make these smaller films. And it kind of set up what would later become the mini studios, the classic studios that existed.
Where they would keep their little independent aspect of it. I know Warner Brothers was very nervous about taking on a $4 million film because they said, well, it's going to cost $5 million to distribute, to promote it. You know, it costs more than that. And they were a little nervous about all that. And they actually did not open it in a lot of America. They opened it in big cities, but they were very nervous about opening it. They did not give it what it deserved, to tell you the truth. You know, they were just a little too nervous about the ethnicity of
yes, it. Studios are big, slow-moving creatures. And how did Hester Street roll out? It started in New York and Los Angeles, I assumed.
You know, I don't know, Ken. I think
us actors, we don't pay attention to that.
No,
You're already on the next job?
No, I just don't. I think it had a lot to do with New York and Los Angeles is all I remember. I don't know about the rest of the country, the Midwest. I don't know.
Okay.
But not because I wasn't interested. I guess I just didn't understand about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, she just laid down a kind of a framework for a lot of what came afterwards, both in terms of women being allowed to.
You have to say, like, I mean, it was insane that I got nominated, you know, and that had to do
Not
with,
really, but okay. It was insane in terms of the size of the film and the distributor, yes.
Insane. And that, again, that had to do with sort of an instinctual bet that Ray and Joan made, in that they got in touch with this elderly gentleman. Well, he probably was 60, but, you know, in the day, he seemed elderly to me, named Max Burkett. And Max Burkett, I believe, had worked for Jack Warner, one of the greats, and was responsible for Julie Christie getting nominated for Darling,
Ah,
her first movie. And he was retired. And I don't know how they found him, but they arranged a meeting with me and Max. And Max sat in a hotel room at the St. Regis or whatever it was, with a big cigar in his mouth. And we had a meeting, and he said that he liked to bet on a dark horse. And
wow.
that was the dark
And
horse.
succeeded.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, I want to tell you something. I just can't even believe I can tell you this story. He literally, back in the day, this man who knew everybody in Hollywood went around with cans of film under his arm and went to Rosalind Russell's house, and she invited 10 people, and Frank Sinatra's house, and he invited 10 people. And I mean, literally, and Amy, your life, you know more about this kind of thing, but I know from nothing. But I know this guy, Max, went around this town with cans of film under his arm and went to people's homes. And that's how I got nominated. It was,
So you got nominated because you were incredible in the film.
no, but I mean, thank you, Amy. But I mean, literally, this guy, he just went into people's living rooms with cans of film. Now, which is something I have to say is that if it were nowadays, I don't think I would have gotten nominated, because there's 847 movies and we get these screeners. And Amy, I don't know if you're like me, but I can't watch them all. I'm daunted.
It's like homework. It's like so much work at the end of the year. You have so many films to watch. To be able
I
to
mean, I have to be honest. I can't watch them all.
No one.
no,
It was a different era, and and I mean, I was lucky to be in that time, and I was lucky to have Max, and I was lucky that Joan and Ray knew enough to get Max.
Smart people. Is anybody out there who'd like to ask a question that that we haven't covered, or would either one of you like to say something that a thought about Joan, or have we said it all?
I think we've said it all.
Yeah, just I mean, I don't know how she got her courage. She deserved her courage. She deserved her.
Oh boy, she did.
Well, we are two lucky girls to have been touched by her life, because we both were seriously put on the map because of her.
Our lives were changed because of she and Ray.
I got to say, for me, that film is one of the films closest to my heart, and one that I'm most proud to be in.
Me too.
And it was a beautiful experience. So lucky us.
Lucky us, Miss Amy.
Lucky us, Miss Kane.
Yes, we got to watch it. Thank you both.
Thank you, Ken Dowser.
And here's her.
Wait, I want to say one more thing. Amy, don't listen. Ken, will you marry me?
Sweetie pie. I did live in your apartment for a while.
Chadwick Prima, though, would like to know, who is my future son-in-law, do you feel you've been typecast as Jewish characters? Well, I've only done 2 myself. No. What about you, Carol?
No, I don't think so.
No. I think, for me, between Crossing Delancey and Yentl, probably I'm very well known as Jewish characters, but having been not brought up Jewish, I've been playing a lot of other characters too, but hopefully not. But thanks for asking, Chad.
So I want to thank Ken, Amy, and Carol. I do want to mention, Ken, I don't know if you saw this, but we have a viewer from Copenhagen. That's kind of cool. Who asked if there was anything inspiring about working with Joan as a female director. I don't know if either either Amy or Carol want to answer that.
It says a female director in Hester Street. Thank you, Carol, for a still very important film. I guess it's Carol's question.
Oh, this is going to be an unpopular response, I think. My response is, this is such not the right thing to say. But I guess I feel like if a director is a wonderful director, that's how I feel. I'm so lucky to work with this wonderful director, man or woman. And if a director's a bad director, I feel unlucky to work with a man or woman. What do you think, Amy?
It's pretty individual. I've worked with a lot of women directors, and some of them I've had a great experience with. Some of them I've had the worst experience of my life with.
Yeah.
So I mean, and men too. It's just the individual. It's really,
that's how I feel.
Yeah, there's certain sensibilities. Maybe I remember with Barbara Streisand. There's never been a director that's told me the right pill to use when I have period cramps. So that was helpful.
There you go.
And Joan was pretty funny. And sometimes when she would be behind the camera, and she would do like occasionally girly things. Like there was a close up on Peter Riegert at one point, in which Joan would Peter was so great in this role, and part of his charm was that he didn't come to you; you had to come to him, which made him keep working harder to be. And at one point, I said something to him, and he gave a very subtle reaction, and Joan whispered to me, "I'd like a little bit bigger reaction. Could you flash him?" And I literally was like, "Really? Sure."
Did you?
Yeah. And so he back there, and I lifted my shirt up, and we got a little eyebrow raise.
I can't believe it.
That was it.
She said that?
Yep.
Oh my God, that's genius.
She was a dame.
So to close this out, there was another question to all three of you if you want to talk about any
from low battery
projects that you're working on.
I have 2 films in the can that I have supporting roles in. I have a film called Confetti coming out, a movie, and a movie called A Mouthful of Air, directed by a wonderful woman, Amy Koppelman. Both of those films are actually directed by women. But Amy Koppelman wrote some beautiful novels, and she wrote a novel called A Mouthful of Air, starring Amanda Seyfried, and I play her mommy. And deals with postpartum depression, very good. And the other one deals with dyslexia. I feel like I'm out here to become a public service announcement now for all this stuff. But they're both beautiful films, so I'm happy to do that. And I made an album that my son Gabriel Barreto produced with a band called Goulis, and hopefully we'll be releasing that this year.
Wow.
And Carol, you're about to start a series, right?
You're about to continue a series.
I'm about to I'm lucky enough to do the second season of a series called Hunters for Amazon, and I am again playing a Jewish woman that is a survivor from the camps, and I'm so lucky because it's brilliantly written and it stars Al Pacino, and I'm just, feel really lucky. So
Great show. And Ken, anything you want to talk about?
Well, I've been trying to get something off the ground about Ben Hecht for years, and maybe it'll happen this year. We'll see.
wow, yippee!
The great Ben Hecht.
The great.
Well, again, on behalf of the JCC of Metro Detroit, we want to thank the three of you, Ken, Amy, Carol, for a great closing night. Again, this was a different kind of festival for us, but we really thank you for joining us. The film festival ends tonight. Again, Everyone out there has until 11:59 to watch a film. And for cultural events coming up, check the website, check your email. If you're not on the email list, make sure you get signed up. Like our YouTube channel and go to our website for more information. And good night, everybody.